Good evening, everybody. Stayed in a little bit later for work. Had to finish off a few odds and sods. Everything's going well at any rate. And you have no idea how much fucking tidying up I had to do around my house. God, I'm surprised I haven't collapsed from exhaustion from that shit. But of course, you didn't come here to find out my trouble with chores. No, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the current state of affairs regarding the politics. But first, I will say this much. My plans are set for getting down there for the 1st of June. Gonna be exciting, isn't it? The day where the country comes together from all walks of life, from all over the country, to be over at Parliament Square with Tommy Robinson. And it is the perfect opportunity for us to showcase to the world the two-tier policing that has been going on. But on to the main subject of this video, which is the politicians themselves. Isn't it funny how the moment there's an election, that's when they tell us what we want to hear, especially with regards to Palestine. After all, we have not exactly been quite, welcoming to these people, and quite rightly so, because obviously these Palestinian wankers and the terrorist sympathisers and what have you are trying to undermine us and are trying to get us all to recognise a state that, quite frankly, doesn't deserve to exist. Now, let me be clear on this before I go any further. When I say they shouldn't exist, I say it mainly because the Islamic values, for the most part, are largely incompatible with Western civilization, especially with all the woke DEI bollocks and, of course, the LGBTQ stuff, which I have no problem with that stuff, but I do have a problem when it's shoved down our throats. But that's another subject entirely. If we allow Islam to rule over, then what we will see is a government that will basically kill gays, homosexuals, whatever you want to call them, by stoning them to death or throwing them off buildings. If women think they have it bad now as well, they haven't seen anything yet where they will basically have to become letterboxers and do everything that they are told from their mostly abusive husbands. Because Islam teaches men that it's okay to beat your wife and that women must basically obey the man. Oh, Christ. Was that a wasp or something coming after me? Christ. Anyway, it teaches the women that they basically are the property of the men, which obviously I have a very big problem with. Because last time I checked, I don't see women as objects of lust or objects of basically, she's my property. I see them as independent people. And Islam obviously wants to do away with that. But I don't really want to talk about Palestine again, because I've already done 2 fucking videos on that shit. So let's draw this back to what this topic is meant to be about, the politicians. How they only seem to say what we want to hear when their careers are on the line. Or for petty political point score, which is what the vast majority of the MPs in the Houses of Parliament, or maybe I was right first time, they would like to do. And it's ironic that in the past, people accused Nigel Farage of political point scoring, and yet all that was MPs merely projecting what they are onto him. But wishy-washy Sunak has not reduced the numbers coming into our country at all, as far as immigration is concerned. And yet it's now that he decides to say that we will reduce the numbers again. And of course, the main thing I talked about a little bit earlier was now Rishi is saying we will now block the visas and deport the pro-terrorist sympathising dickheads who keep marching down our streets. Frankly, he should have done this 2 years ago and got rid of this trash from our bloody country. But now, it's our duty to get rid of these traitors from the Houses of Treachery and 10 Downing Street on the 4th of July. The way I look at this is that these politicians whether it's 2 parties or 200 mainstream parties, they are all 2 cheeks of the same shit-covered arse, bluntly speaking. And it's always funny when we see the mainstream parties basically stick a middle finger up at the British people and do whatever the fuck they're going to do anyway. And then they only come out and say, you know what, we're going to get tough on these people, or we're going to deport the illegal immigrants, or we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Which all in the end is just a bloody pantomime. They're full of shit, like all politicians, or almost all of them, and they basically will only continue to serve themselves. But of course the mainstream media won't tell you this, because say it with me folks, it doesn't suit the narrative. But that is what they do every single time without fail. They say stuff that we all want to hear, or they think we want to hear, and then they stick a middle finger up at us, do a massive U-turn, and do whatever the hell they want to do themselves anyway. And what they want to do right now is not integrate, they want to basically subjugate us through culture/race war, which at the rate we're going, we may end up ending in one, rather. English is hard, I know. But I'm worried, more than anything, it could be leading to something even more sinister. But it astounds me, nonetheless, that we have traitors in the houses of treachery who are more interested in political point scoring and screwing over the British people rather than actually doing their jobs and actually giving the British people what they want. And anybody who tries to say the whole spiel of Brexit is a disaster, no, it wasn't a disaster. It was only made that way because of the people who were in command of that ship, basically. That is something that lefties won't like to hear. But swallow that bitter pill, you most certainly will. Because at the end of the day, the only reason we got a Brexit in name only, a Brino, is because of traitors like treasoner Theresa May and David the con man Cameron, who all effectively didn't want us to leave the European Union, and they kept on talking about this deal as if it was included in like small print that we never saw. There was no small print. Even David Cameron said categorically, if we vote to leave, we will leave. No small print, no clauses, no excuses, just we leave. But it's because we've had Remainers guiding the HMS Brexit that it's become a shipwreck in the first place. And I must say, it was a pretty big iceberg we ended up heading at any rate. Anyway, this is basically what has been going on. We've had politicians who say they're going to give us one thing, but end up doing the other. Do you think they'd be able to get away with that if they were doing like car dealerships and what have you? I'm going to sell you this brand new car, and they give you some old fucking banger that you'll be lucky if you get 100 miles out of. No, you take them to task over it. Politics should be exactly the same. If they promise us stuff and then refuse to deliver, they should be held to account for that, and they should at least face charges of fraud, because they are basically defrauding the British people. Again, people are not going to like that, but it's the cold bit of truth. We can't let politicians keep getting away with this, because if they know they can keep getting away with this, they're going to keep doing it. It's like telling a kid to not go and punch the other students when they realise that they're not going to receive any consequences. Like, they're going to keep doing it because they know they're going to get away with it. And whether that's because the people in charge are too lazy to do anything about it, or they're just complicit, I leave that to your subjective opinion. Though in this case, it's a pretty big school of basically traitors who basically want to screw us over. So I leave that to you. But I think we should have more people in the houses of treachery face criminal prosecution if they continue to lie to us. Because you wouldn't lie to police or a judge in a trial, for fear of perjury. You wouldn't say, we're going to give you this brand new car and then give you an old banger instead and let them get away with it. So it stands to reason we do the same for politicians. Because unless we do this, they will continue to take the piss. They will continue to have us for a ride at our expense. And look what they've been doing to our country. They have basically been bringing on people from the third world shitholes that these people come from, most of them. Places like Syria, places like Afghanistan, people from Iraq, and then of course you get the people from Ukraine and other places. And then we get the Albanians, the Algerians, and the people have had enough of it. I've said it before, where the main points that this election is going to be decided upon number one is immigration, number two is coming out of the ECHR, and the third is putting our national security and our sovereignty first. But unfortunately, our career politicians are more interested in turning Great Britain into Great Britannistan. Again, the mainstream media will not tell you this, because they know it would basically expose the very narrative our establishment are pulling. People can argue with me all they want of, oh, I'm far right, or I'm too deluded to understand, or that's not what's going on, or whatever. I'll tell you one thing, it is happening though. It's pissing it down to rain again. Anyway, they can tell me all they want that all this shit isn't happening. But we can all see it unfurling before our very eyes. Like when they roll out the red carpet. Only in this case, when we're about to step on the red carpet, some dickhead sticks his foot out and then trips us up. That's basically what's going on right now. I'll also be clear on this much, because I know I haven't done a disclaimer on it for a lot of the time in this video, but I will say this much. I would be fine with Palestine if they didn't basically support terrorism and genocide of Jews. If the Palestinians genuinely wanted peace, if they genuinely wanted a place to call their own home, just like Israel has, and basically have the ability to enjoy themselves as a peaceful, tolerant state, do you think I'd be intolerant of them? No, I wouldn't. Because they'd be showcasing to us that they can live with others. But Egypt, Iran, Iraq, and that's just to name a few, by the way, all these predominantly Muslim countries, they cannot stand the idea of living with Jews. That's the thing. And people can say, well, that's not the case. Well, look what Egypt's gone and done when they invaded Iraq. Sorry, not Iraq, Israel. Look what they've done. And what I find funny as well is, they've gone and attacked Israel. Nobody's interested in when the Palestinians or the Al-Qaeda, the Hamas, the Hezbollah, or basically any terrorist organization commits an atrocity. They won't dare put an article out of that. But the moment something to them happens, to Palestinians happens, they try to throw the blame on Israel. And they try to say, look how evil they are, instead of looking inward. I'm not going to go any further with that shit, because, as I said, I've made a video about it. But our career politicians are still considering the idea of recognising a Palestinian state. That's what's sad. And it's only now as well that Rishi has decided to say, we will not allow people to protest violent jihad. Should have done this 2 years ago, mate. Well, you're not my mate. Fuck you. But you get the idea. And Keir Starmer is, as I said, he is going to be Conservatives, instead of 20 miles an hour, 100. That's what it's going to be. Everything that Conservatives are doing, Labour will be 5 times, if not more, worse. Guarantee it. Which is why I do not trust Keir the bullshitter Starmer or Rishi-Washy Sunak. The only people I would even consider giving a shot to is Reform. And we all need to vote that as a collective. Because at the end of the day, other than the fact it's pissing it down a rain, if we keep voting the same parties, it's the literal definition of insanity. We're voting the same shit expecting change or expecting things to be different when they're never going to be. The only way we're going to get that change is by changing who's in power. Get rid of the mainstream parties. Because our career politicians are going to do everything in their power to lie straight through their teeth to tell you, we're going to sell you the world. And in return, the only thing you're going to get is a pile of shit. That's what it boils down to. But it infuriates me that these traitors will only say what we want to hear when it comes down to an election. And when all is said and done, they will piss our money up the wall, they will screw over the country, and they will continue to be self-serving, lying wankers behind our backs. I say enough's enough. And I say, let's hold these traitors to account and show them that we, the British people, will no longer be deceived and no longer tolerate lying, scumbag, traitor politicians in our country.